Billman.
Every love story has a great beginning. This is ours. It was June of '82, and I was living in LA and working for one of the first fantasy phone call services.
And I was in Seattle working at SeaTac Airport, reading the current men's magazines. I would call occasionally, but not having a credit card, I didn't get a call, so I just called to chat with the girls.
Including me. One night he called, the girls passed his call to me, and I said, look, I'm going to be in Seattle the next night to meet a client. I promise I'll call you.
I gave him my work number, and we said goodbye.
The next evening, I left LAX, and 2 hours later, I arrived in Seattle. I met my client, and we were in the process of impressing each other when he said he would go and get his car. I grabbed my bag, ran to the payphones, and I dialed Scott's number, but he wasn't there. So I thought, okay, I tried. Well, 30 minutes passed, and I went out, and no car. So I went back in the airport terminal, had my client paged, no answer. 30 more minutes, still no car, no answer. 2 hours later, tears were beginning to slide down my cheek, and I walked back into the terminal, took out Scott's number, and dialed.
When I said hello, she started crying.
He said, don't move, I'll be right there. So I hung up, stood right where I was. Within a few minutes, he walked around the door.
Leanna?
Scott. And yes, the stars aligned, time stood still, and two people who were looking for love found each other. I only learned later that my client was using another guy's credit card to pay for his calls and didn't want to get caught in the fraud. So 24 hours later, I was back on a plane to LA.
And I was back at work.
But oh, those 24 hours. The attraction was instant and mutual, and we acted on it. As Scott put me on a plane the next night, he looked into my eyes and said,
I will see you again.
The romance was on, and by October, Scott was laid off, and I convinced him to move to LA. After a short period of living together, I looked at him and said, look, if you want to marry me, don't expect it just to happen. You're going to have to ask.
On Christmas of 1984, I did, on one knee, with a diamond ring.
September 7th, 1985, we were married on a sunny day in Port Orchard, Washington. So now the story is supposed to go, and they lived happily ever after.
Not exactly.
It was the 80s in LA, and before long we were living life in the fast lane, caught up in drugs, and a crystal meth habit that we had for daily use. Didn't take long for it to change our lives completely. By 1990, I lost my best friend to AIDS. I lost my job. We had to file bankruptcy, and with that came the repo of our car, the loss of our apartment, and a huge strain on our relationship.
We moved in to our friend's garage and lived there.
In spring of '93 in Texas, my oldest nephew was planning his wedding. We managed to scrounge up enough money for me to fly.
That separation started a change in our lives we never anticipated. Could there be life away from LA?
The next month, my niece also was married in Houston, and this time we both came, but so did our little secret.
None of our families knew what was happening.
This was about the time I would later learn that my sister began praying for us, that someone would come into our lives and help us. Later that summer, I came and spent 6 weeks with my sister.
It was the longest time we'd ever spent apart.
But when I returned home, I knew things had to change. I just didn't know how we were going to survive. God responded in his mercy to the prayers lifted in our name, and doors began to open.
That Christmas, we flew up to Washington, and my parents gave us money to move. It was either going up north, living near them,
or coming east to Texas and be with my family. The U-Haul headed east, and we became Texans. Everything we owned went into that U-Haul, and our car was hitched behind. And somewhere in all the sorting and packing, I lost my wedding ring. Broke my heart.
It took 4 days to get us from Texas, take us to Texas. We had no jobs, no money, and no clue what to expect.
My sister opened her home to us. Within weeks, we were clean. We both had jobs and an apartment of our own. Now you're thinking comes the happily ever after part. Not quite.
This February, it'll be 16 years since we've been in Texas. In that time, so much has happened.
We renewed our wedding vows on our 10th anniversary.
We lost loved ones and gained new members in our family. We have struggled with finances, but still have been blessed with abundance.
In short, we have lived life and everything that comes with it. I don't know if anybody ever lives happily ever after, but I do know that our relationship has survived.
We find love and commitment we share grows every day by serving others.
I could list all the things that we don't have, but the reality is we have everything we need and more. And in a quiet moment when we sit on the couch and I reach out and touch Scott's arm, the feeling of his skin on my fingertips stirs feelings of passion and comfort.
For better, for worse.
For richer, for poorer.
In sickness and in health. These are the things we promised and have experienced them all. We were given an extraordinary gift, each other.
Through God's love and mercy, we will continue to cherish and culture this great gift. Congratulations, Diamond Cutters International.
We know that 25 years is all about.
It's a journey every day. Our story is not complete because we're not finished yet. The next chapter is waiting to be written. One thing I do know, though, is when we're really old and we look back on the improbable beginning of our relationship, through tears and through laughter, we know that this love is truly meant to be.
Amen.